Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Comic Report wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. We have a free agent tracker that tracks all the Commanders' moves, tracks all the moves by every team in the NFL. So you can go there and check it out with analysis of each pick. And it's one-stop shopping to find out about the Commanders' picks or signings, moves, and as well as any other team in the NFL. So if you want to find out what people think about what the Cowboys have done, etc., go there. It's all there for you. Anyway, Commanders have made a few signings today. I'm wrapping this up as I talk. It's 9:15, about 9:15 on Wednesday night, first day of free agency. So if anything happens beyond this point, then you'll have to hear about it later or go to ESPN.com because there will be analysis up there. In fact, right before I was getting ready to tape this, they made another signing. So we'll get to all those signings in a minute. There were three today that are going to add depth if nothing else. So, but they also brought back quarterback Marcus Mariota, a very good signing. Listen, back in June, I was hearing what a good influence and presence he was for Jaden Daniels and how much Daniels liked having him around. That was back in the spring, and it got only better. So you don't just want to have a guy just for that reason. He showed he could go play when he had to go in against Carolina, when he had to play against Dallas. He looked really good. But it was also just the way he could help Jaden Daniels. He's been through a lot of the stuff that Jaden Daniels has been through. He had good success early, and then he did not. So what could he help Daniels with to help keep him on that track, but also just guidance? And Daniels is very good at picking the brain of veteran players, especially guys like Mariota, Wagner, Zach Ertz, Terry McLaurin, Jeremy Reeves, among others. So just a good signing. I know they were going to bring back Jeff Driscoll if Mariota went somewhere else. Mariota is waiting to see if there was a place he could go compete for a starting job, not be handed to him. I don't think anybody's going to do that, but would anybody give him a chance to compete? He did do well in those games, but that didn't arise. And I also wondered if he wouldn't want to be closer to home in Oregon because he's got a young family, just had another one born in December, but he liked being here. I thought it was going to be either here or somewhere closer to his home or somewhere he had a place to start. So anyways, he's back. Good signing. Derek Forrest, he's off to Buffalo. And I always liked Derek. I thought he handled this situation well this year. I understand why others were ahead of him, and they warranted that. But I think he's a good dude. I think he's good in the locker room. And like I said, I felt like he handled his situation like a true pro. And I remember I would go up and talk to him and say, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, I'm doing well. Like he was always, and you just check in on him, how guys doing. He always would say that. He never looked down. I'm sure it ate him up because if you're a competitor, it eats you up. But how do you handle it? And I thought he handled it very well. So whatever he does, I always appreciated and respected how he did that. And then Benjamin St-Juste going to the Chargers. So he's gone. I didn't think he'd be back. I didn't think Forrest would be back either. I told you guys that before. St-Juste, we know what he was as a corner. I felt like he's a smart guy. He could really explain what needed to be done here, what happened here. He just couldn't always do it, or maybe he would do the same mistakes, right? A lot of penalties. We know that. But I also thought there were times where he got a lot more flack than was warranted at times. And then at times there wasn't. So I get it. And I think it was good for him to move on. So he goes, and I would also say the same thing about him. When they traded for Marshawn Lattimore, that's a statement on what he was doing as well. And, and then as the season went on, when Lattimore started playing, he played a lot less. But he was not a guy who was pouting. He was not a guy who was doing anything other than handling his situation the best he could. So whatever you want to say about him, he too handled that well. So anyways, the Commanders signed 3 players today. So let's get this. First one was Eddie Goldman. I'm going to go over him in a minute. then cornerback, defensive nose tackle Eddie Goldman, then cornerback Jonathan Jones, and defensive end Dietrich Wise. So the last two were from the Patriots. First one, Goldman, was with the Falcons. Let's start with him. So in general, though, I will say none of these are going to break. We're breaking the bank. In fact, like Wise and I think Jones are those guys are in the $5 to $6 million range for the 1 year. They're all three are 1 year deals. And I know I get a lot of people are asking about, is this the all grandpa team or whatever? Because it is getting to be an older team. But what I like is when they're not spending exorbitant on guys who I don't think would be worth what they would pay, right? So I appreciate that. They're signing these guys to 1 year deals so that way you're going to have to get these more people next year. That's part of the risk, but you are getting good depth, if nothing else, for this year. I do agree with people out there about the defense. I'd like to see a little bit more youth on that side of the ball, especially on the front. And I'd like to see another corner despite them getting Jones, but I'll get to him in a minute. I do like that signing, and I think Wise can help as well. Are they premium starters? No, but can they help? Yes. So and with Goldman, it'll be interesting. He's a big nose tackle, 6'3", listed at 325. A lot of times when you list at 325, it's going to go a little bit north of that, but he is listed at that. So he gives them a big body inside, which is something they absolutely needed. And so I think, to be honest, when they traded John Ridgeway and kept Fedarian Mathis, I felt like that was a bit of a mistake because I felt like Ridgeway was just better, and the season proved that out. Um, but but with Goldman, you do get that big body in there. He used to be a very good run defender. I think I'd say he's probably a decent to solid run defender now. Used to be very good. His first 4 years in Chicago when he came in the league, I think he was there from 2015. Played in Atlanta the last 3 years. Um, played in both played with a three-man front in Chicago under Vic Fangio. A lot of four-man and 4-man fronts in Atlanta. So, but again, he offers you that size. Um, Question I have is, this is a guy who did retire or unretired twice. So you wonder about somebody who's, what's the motivation for him to keep playing? Is it he just missed it? What is that? And so, but he's clearly coming back up here. He's coming up here. He's from the DC area. So it's a chance for him to come play at home, and it's just for 1 year. So, if he can go out there and help the run, that's great. And I think he can do that. And especially think of it this way too. When you look at for him, I'm going to check my phone because stuff keeps buzzing. But when you look at for him, like he can play over the nose. So when they want to use some of those bigger defensive line sets, he's going to be good for that. He's a guy that will be part of the rotation. That's it. So like when they go into they like to run, last year they like to run those three defensive tackle sets. Well, a lot of times they're putting Johnny Newton over the nose with Jonathan Allen and then Daron Payne with Allen as a three tech and then Payne out as an end. Well, now you can put Goldman over the nose, and then you could still have Payne as an end, but Newton as a three tech. That's where they like him best. So I think this is going to help him. So just this little move, I think, will help Johnny Newton. And there are things that Goldman can still do. Like he can still be effective at times against the run. I will say, like last year in Atlanta, he started off as a sub. Well, midway through the year, Raheem Morris basically started taking more of an interest in the defense because he had to, and he made some changes. And one of the changes was more playing time for Eddie Goldman. And the difference was in the last 8 games, when Goldman was playing more, they allowed 106.6 rushing yards per game. The first 8 games, I think it was 8 or 9 games, 133.1 yards rushing per game. Now, I don't think it's going to all be because of Goldman, but he was one of the changes. And there are still things he can do. He does give you power in the middle because that he's got that strength. He's not going to really threaten you as a pass rusher. He's kind of plays in a little bit of a phone booth, so he's not going to be making plays off tackle, getting over there because of his quickness. That's not his game. He can eat up space in the middle, and that's what he does. There was one play against the Eagles I saw where it's a first down and goal from the 8, and he splits the guard and the left guard and center, and they try to double team him, but he plays with power The guard tries to block down. He holds his ground. Running back gets off to his left. He gets out of that double team, push back, rolls over and grabs the play. And in fact, I put that little clip up here on YouTube for those who want to go check it out. But just a good play with power. Now, there's plays where he's not doing anything. That's fine. There's going to be a lot of those too. But that's the thing that he can offer this team is some power in the middle. They did not have that big guy. He's not he's not costly at all. So it's not a big risk here with him. I would still add more to this front because I just think you need to get some more young guys up there because they are older up there. I do like Dorrance Armstrong up there, and Deron Payne can still play. Now, is he he's not a Pro Bowler anymore, or hasn't been, but he can still play. How much better does it make the defense? I don't know, but it does give them something that they needed. It's not the edge rusher, it's not the lockdown corner, but it is a guy who can help you in the middle. So there you go. That's one little thing that they wanted that you can cross off the list for that. Now, again, understand who he is, but he does provide something that they needed. All right, now let's go to cornerback Jonathan Jones. It's funny because when I was kind of going over the list of guys that were available today for corners, he was a guy that intrigued me because of his versatility. But what is the thing that I always tell you that Dan Quinn likes those big corners? So I was just like, maybe not because he's only about 5'10". He's a lot like Sammer still. But what I have to take into consideration is how much he likes a certain type of mentality. That's what Jones offers. Jones offers that what they would call the tough dog ass competitor. That's what he is. So you got a guy like him, you got Lattimore who's like that, just has to play at a higher level. But then you also, I think Will Harris, the safety they signed from the Saints, has some of that as well. Like he arrives with some pop. But I think that's one of the things that they really like about Jonathan Jones. And also keep in mind that Adam Peters has a good relationship with Bill Belichick, and Belichick obviously coached Jonathan Jones and knows him very well. So I don't know if Peters picked the brain of Belichick before they went and got him, but I'm going to assume that they did because again they have a good relationship, so it would make sense. So I don't think they're going to do this like if there's not some sort of good intel and sign off from him. And it's not like Jones actually did a nice job last year. He did play hurt. And, he apparently, but I don't think people even knew that. Now, I know that because my colleague Mike Reese tweeted something about late in the year, and he quoted New England quarterbacks coach Mike Pellegrino just talking about Jones's performance and just called him a competitor and an old school player because he was the one who brought up that Jones had been playing hurt in the early part of the season. Jones wasn't the one saying anything about it to make excuses for anything. He just went out there and played. And I think like he has a lot of respect up there. Was an undrafted player. Again, Mike Reese is a guy that he's covered the Patriots forever, much like I've done here. And I trust Mike with everything. And he told me he's a true pro, veteran leader. And he tweeted out about him saying he was a class act and said that he would do things like, again, a leader. He would break down the team in the huddle before, in the locker room before a game or whatever. So like that's the kind of guy he is. He can still play. Now the question is, where does he play? Because again, he's a lot like Samerstill. They can both play inside, they can both play outside. I'd say they're both considered best in the slot, but they both have a lot of now. Jones has a lot of experience on the outside, but so too now does Samerstill. So where could they be used? It could be just switching around depending on matchups. That's a possibility. I do think Jones is a little bit bigger than Samerstill, and he will play physical too. I put up a video on Twitter of him just coming up on a pass and just really attacking the receiver and just a really good, I think it may have been a running back, but just a really good solid pop, but arrived with some attitude. And I think that's really good to have. He and Harris kind of both do that, and they both show a lot of fire along with that. And I like that aspect. So this is a good move for the cornerback room, a good leader. I think, the loss of St. Juice versus the gain of Jones, well, they're coming out ahead in that. Um, but they still, to me, could use another body in there, another young player that can go in there and develop into something. So that way, first of all, if Lattimore continues to have injuries, you've got to be prepared. That's the thing that concerns me with him still is the are the injuries. So if he can't go, who's your guy? And so you need to get another guy in there that you can develop, and that way, you can you have to. You just have to. So there you go. I don't know if they're going to be able to get that, but they really would be wise to do that. But on the other hand, you still need a defensive end. And I think you could still use a defensive end in the draft, running back, and you only have the 5 picks. So they've got to be very smart with it. And maybe, again, if in an ideal world, they're able to trade back or accumulate more picks in the top 3 rounds or even the fourth round to get a running back, whatever. So, anyways, but that's for another day. But Jones, like I said, Jones can still play. I can tell you, my understanding is Dan Quinn was pretty fired up about this one because I think this is his kind of player. I just think like I said, the way he plays, the physical style, the mentality, the tough competitor stuff. That's all. That's what he loves. So when I look at the model for a corner under Quinn, prior to last year, it was guys over 6 foot and above with length, could play a certain way. Well, since he's been here, he's added Samerstill and then now Jones. Now, of course, Lattimore as well. And Lattimore is more what he typically has. But Samerstill and Jones are competitors. And like I said, that's what Lattimore is known for as well. He just didn't play as well against the top receivers, and nobody did again here. So, anyways, so that's one of the things I like about him. The question is, what does he have left? And again, is he a full-time starter? Is he going to be a really good depth piece? I think that remains to be seen. He's being paid like a depth piece, but he may have to be more than that here. And if he has to, I think he can go out and help them. Is it the best corner room in the NFL? No, but I think so much of this depends on how Lattimore progresses next year, or just what level he can still play at. Is he an up and down corner? Is he really good one week and then not the next? I don't know. But if he gets back to what they hope he was when they traded for him, then it looks a lot different. Otherwise, then you could have some issues. But like I said, when I watched a couple of things that jumped out when I watched some tape of Jones tonight is just, first of all, he seems to have a really good understanding of routes, route concepts, what guys are going to try and run from where, because he always seemed to be in the right position to defend certain routes. Like really just, he was breaking with the receiver on the routes, whether he's covering inside, covering outside, the way he played zone with very good, I felt like he played zone with very good vision and positioning. I think that which obviously is very important in a zone, of course. And so that's all good. And I think he did that well. And then there are times where a couple things. Again, he's only 5'10", but he gets lower in his stance. Not like super, super low, but he does get lower. And it's funny because I was watching him versus one of the other corners on the Patriots one time, and just like the difference in their stance is when they're, how low he was, just a little enough lower that when he's backpedaling, he's able to drive on the ball. And I saw one play, in fact, I'm putting up just a little some screenshots, excuse me, thank you, some screenshots of him, just what I'm talking about, just how low he would get, his ability to drive on the ball, and the end result, which is a ball from Joe Burrow that was thrown very wide because of where he was, because of his positioning after driving on the ball. So he still offers you something. It just depends what level. And then again, are you expecting to be a 17-game starter, or are you going to go out and get another piece, which I think they should do, and add more to a room where you need more. They also re-signed Kayvon Seymour, but they still need more folks. But I did like what I saw from Jones in the couple games I watched, and just the things you hear about him in the locker room, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That I think he'll be good. But what I talked about too, so he has good speed, but because of the ability to break, one of the things you notice too is that there were multiple times where I saw a receiver try to throw a double move on him, but because he plays with good patience, vision, it doesn't seem to be panic in his movement. And he's also has enough confidence in him that he can provide a little bit of a cushion with the receiver in some of those coverages to where you can kind of hesitate if it's a double move and recover. And that's what he did well because I didn't see the double move hurting him in the couple games I watched. I was only able to watch about 2 games worth of stuff, but that's what I saw. So, anyways, I do like that signing. I think he's a good signing for them. And again, this is we're not talking about Jalen Ramsey in his prime here, but we are talking about a guy that's going to be good in that room, good in the locker room, and I think he can still help him on the field. So then the next guy they signed was Dietrich Wise, and honest to God, I was getting ready to record this, and that's what popped. So a defensive end from New England. Yes, another guy 30 and the 30 and over crowd. Again, I know what you're saying and I agree. Like they are getting older. It is this I don't view this as loading up for a Super Bowl run per se. I think you're going to try and do that every year with Jaden Daniels because it's not like we're talking about certain level of players. These are guys are just more depth pieces. And I think that's what, and specific roles as well. I think that's where Wise is. Like he's been in the NFL for 8 years. He played with New England for 8 years. So like Jones, he's won a Super Bowl. So that's always good to add too, to have guys who do that, who come from programs that worked a certain way. Now, the last several years, the Patriots haven't been very good, but they did have when they came in the league, he and Jones, they had to work a certain way, and there was just expectation. That's the expectation that's now here. So I think those kind of guys will probably very much appreciate getting back to a situation. We're not talking about the Patriots here yet, but we are talking about a place that has a certain standard and also, won 12 games a year ago and has a really good young quarterback. So I think there's some good things for them, but I do view him as a role player. Wise, again, his deal is around 5 million. I think it is $5 million. He's a 3-time captain in New England, so another guy that has leadership skills. I think that defensive line room could use that. I think Dorrance Armstrong can give you some of that as well, but I do think that's a good thing to add. But he's 6'5", 280, good length, but he's more of a power player, so he's more of a guy that can help stop the run. That's also what they needed. A lot of these moves have been made. Like Jones can defend the run as well. If he's in the slot, he's going to be a good. He will stick his nose in there, man. So, and with a guy like that, it's not about 2 and 3 yard runs. It's about stopping the 60-yard runs, right? That's what he can do. Now, it's not like those guys are perfect and make every tackle, but Jones does give you that as a corner. And so Sanders still sticks his nose in there as well. But I do think that helps. And I think with Goldman, you bring him in here to stop the run. I think with Wise, you're bringing him here to help against the run. They need to do that because we saw what Saquon Barkley did. Like we saw what everybody did against his run defense, and that has to happen. I told you too. Like the number one thing Quinn wants is guys who can affect the passer. Well, short of that, you better stop something, and that's got to be the run because they actually did better against the pass, believe it or not. But the run defense was just dreadful. That has to improve. And so all these defensive moves so far, to me, even with Kinlaw. Now I don't. Again, with Kinlaw, we talked about him enough, and it could just well be that he is just they shift him out to end, and can he help there? I don't know. We'll see. But it just adds more pieces to that front. So and they are paying Kinlaw like he's a starter, right? That's especially compared to these other guys. Anyways, so Wise, we'll see. I haven't had a chance to study him yet. I do know a little bit about him just from that, but I do think it's more about the run defense again with some pass rush moves. I think he had like 5 sacks last year, so he has the length. Maybe you can threaten a little bit, maybe a little bit, but just if you can set the edge and set and help against the run, then that's going to be a big help here because one of the biggest problems they had was the inconsistency at setting the edge against the run, and it made a big difference. Give me Johnny Newton inside with that quickness. If you can set the edge, he's going to make some plays there for you. Anyway, so that's all. That's what they got. We still need to see more action on that defense. And again, I know what you're saying. I agree with you. You still need to get younger. The problem is, or one of the things I do like is they're not throwing crazy money out there just to appease what everybody thinks they should do. Like, I think there's very much a plan for what they want to do and how they see things. And I think, so it's funny because I'm looking at social media and it's March 12th and some people are panicking already about what the defense is and all that. It's March 12th. There's 6 months left. So just take a deep breath and exhale because there's still more things to be done. Now, will they get that impact defensive player they need? Maybe not. But can you add more good pieces? Yes. Can you make it a better defense still? Yes. I think these moves, I think, Jones in particular, I think Wise can help. I think Goldman can help. Again, they're not all stars at this, but can they help? That's what they need. They just need more guys who can help. I like what Sheldon Day did last year, but he was also undersized as a backup tackle. You got now have you have three, another big tackle, and depending on how they see Kinlaw, he could move inside too at times because that's where he's been. So you do have more size up there, and I think that was definitely needed. So that's a good start, but they still got to add more to get to that point where you can say, now I can see them getting much better. But the draft will help with that, and then other moves. There are going to be guys cut after the draft. There are still more guys out there. They've got to find a pass rushing defensive end. Dante Fowler's still out there, of course. Von Miller's still out there. I do believe this team, they certainly had interest in Khalil Mack. I do believe there was some interest in Joey Bosa and I believe DeMarcus Lawrence. But when my understanding was that price tag was high, and you see what his deal is in Seattle, I think it's like 3 years and like 60 million, something like that. It's a lot. So that's the kind of stuff they're not doing with the mid 30 crowd, right? These are all 1-year deals. The only guy over 30 who's gotten a multi-year deal for them is Laramie Tunsil, and that's because they just traded for him. But he's also a guy whose game can age well. The rest of them are all on 1-year deals. So that part is fine to me. So we'll see. Long way to go. I felt like today there was some solid, again, Jones I feel is a solid move, and we're just going to see how everybody else fits. But they're depth pieces. Consider it that way. But again, Azeez Ojulari, he's still out there. Would they have interest in him? He's a little bit smaller for defensive end than they typically have, but we'll see. There in the corner, if there's another corner out there, I don't know that there's another corner out there that I'd say you could go get him when he necessarily fits for exactly what they want to do. I would try to, see if there's some young guys that you can get in the draft. But again, first and second round only. You can only get 2 players with that unless you trade. So anyway, folks, I'm just rambling now. I will be back probably on Friday. If not, then sometime over the weekend. We're going to be talking to, I believe, Laramie Tunsil on Saturday, I believe, and we'll have more signings to cover over the next several days. So I'll be back. It may be Friday morning, folks. So stay tuned, but I'll talk to you next time.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.